Now, after exploring one-to-many, let's now have a look at one-to-one relationships and how we could manage those with Django. Back in our example code, I want to add a new model to set up a one-to-one relationship. We could also connect the existing two models in a one-to-one relationship though, and I think that's worth considering for a second. Because at first, this might sound like it's not possible. After all, we did connect them with a many-to-one or one-to-many relationship already. But of course, that connection is only based on this one field, the author field. If we, for example, had another field on the author, let's say the favorite created book, so the favorite book this author wrote, if that's the case, then of course we could set up a one-to-one relation because this author has one favorite book written by him or her, and that one book was only written by that author because a book in our world here only has one author. So we could set up two different kinds of relations for the same two models. The only prerequisite is that we don't do it on the same field, of course. We can't set up a second relation on the author field. That is a one-to-many relation, and if we would want to change that, we would have to change that relation. We can't add an additional relation on the same field. But we could add a new field, for example, to the author, and also set up a one-to-one relation if we needed to. Depending on what you're building, this could be required, but here I'll simply add a new class, and I'll name this address. And the assumption is what I outlined earlier, that one author has one address and one address belongs to one author. So again, I of course inherit from models.model here, and then for the address we have something like the street, which is a char field, let's say, with a max length of 80. And we have a postal code, which could be an integer number, but we can also turn this into a char field to store it as text, even if it's a combination of numbers. But it's not a number in a mathematical sense. Therefore, I'll go for max length here as well and maybe pick 5. And we could add more, obviously. We could also add the city here and set city to models char field max length 50 or something like this. This is all possible. You can model this however you want. You could even outsource city into a separate model, which you then connect with a relation to address. But for the moment, I'll keep it simple. I'll set up my address model like this, and now we want to set up a one-to-one relation between address and author. How do we do that? Well, we go to one of the two models, and it's generally up to you to which one you go. Just as with the one-to-many relation, you just want to go to the one where adding that relation key is more logical. So in my case, I would say it makes more sense to look at the author having an address than at the address having an author, just as it made more sense for the book to have an author than for the author to have books. But you can set it up on either of the two. Here, I'll go to the author and add an address field, and then set up the connection, but now not with foreign key. That would be used for a many-to-one relation, as you can tell here. But instead, there is a OneToOneField. And that does what the name implies. It sets up a one-to-one relation. Now, the first argument you pass to OneToOneField is the name of the model to which you want to set up a relation. So in this case, address. Then, just as with the foreign key, we also want to set up what should happen if the related model gets deleted. So if a related data entry gets deleted. We do this with onDelete, and here we can also set this to cascade or one of the other options. And that's basically it. That's how we can set up such a relation. Now we can generally configure it as before. For example, here we can also set up a related name now, and set up the name which we then can access on the address to find out which author lives there. And we could name this author like this. But for a one-to-one relation, we don't really need to do that, at least if you want to use author as a name here, because that will be the automatically assigned name anyways here. For one-to-one relationships, it's not author set, as it would have been in the one-to-many case, because it isn't a set of results. It's just one author. So on the related model, on the address, we will later be able to access that author on an author property. That's also something Django will set up for us here. Hence, we can leave it like this, save that, and quit the running development server just as before. And then, just as before, make sure that we create our migrations with manage py make migrations, and we get a new problem. Because we're now adding that address field to author, and we already do have existing authors, of course, and they don't have an address yet. Hence, Django is wondering what it should do with those. We could either, again, provide a one-off default or quit and try to fix it with our settings in the models. And I'll do the latter, select an option here, and again set address here to null equals true to allow null values in there. Now we can make the migrations again, and this now succeeds. And then we can run migrate. And this applies those migrations, and for the existing authors, it now simply filled in null as a value in the address field. With that, we can of course restart our server, but we might want to tweak our admin model first of all. But before we do that, of course, I again want to use the shell to quickly play around with these models so that we get a feeling for how we can work with them there.